Serious. Redditors, who witnessed a murder? What is your story? Saw a guy push his passenger, an old man, out of a car. The car was screeching, speeding around a corner. The door flings open and the driver very clearly pushed the old man out. Not the greatest thing for a 10-year-old to witness. The even weirder thing was that as I stood there in shock, while the old man was completely still in the road, a weird man walking past me chuckled and said, "It wasn't you, was it?" Then chuckled again. It hasn't affected my life, but think about it every now and then. This was when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, so late 80s. My friend's mom had picked us up from school in her station wagon, and I was in the way back. There were probably 6 or 7 of us kids in the car and we were stopped at a traffic light across from a homeless shelter, about to get onto the interstate. This guy is walking down the street with an armful of chewing tobacco and drops a pack. A homeless guy leaning up against the wall picked it up. There was an angry exchange in which the guy refused to give back the tobacco, so the other guy kicked him and stomped him to death on the sidewalk. Worked in a pub when I was younger. Walking around cleaning tables and emptying ashtrays, back in the days you could smoke indoors. And a couple of guys are standing at a high table talking. Another guy comes in and starts shouting with one of the group, getting a bit heated, so I go over to ask them to calm it down and remove all empty glasses and bottles from the area. As I'm talking to them, the lone guy lunges with a knife, misses me but goes in the chest of the other. He moves into a bear hug with the guy he just stabbed and continues to stab him a further 14 times in the back before running out of the building. Spent what seemed like hours putting pressure on the stab wounds waiting for an ambulance, but the guy was dead before they got there. Police caught the guy, I gave a statement, and spent a few days in court giving evidence and helping get the guy jailed. Not something I ever want to experience again as it fucked me up for quite some time. Saw my neighbor murdered in cold blood in my own driveway. My neighbor was helping his lady friend escape a very abusive relationship. Lady's ex hunted her down like a dog. Saw my neighbor walking back home with her after they went to get food for his kids. Heard 3 loud pops. I ran outside to find her screaming and him blown out of his shoes and into my driveway. He had a hole in his chest big enough to put my fist in. There was nothing I could do to save him except sit with him and hold his hand while I prayed for him to pass quickly. I'll never forget that night. 48 hours later I broke the lease on my house and moved in with my boyfriend who lives in a much safer borough. You were an awesome neighbor and a wonderful father, Kane. You're certainly missed. Obviously, a lot of lead up to the story, but I'm not going there. My girlfriend was taking her dog for a walk while I got showered for work. I'm in the bathroom when I hear voices coming from outside. I look out the window, and to my horror, there is my girlfriend talking to her abusive stepfather, who is standing about 5 feet away from her. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I knew it wasn't good. Stepfather raises his shotgun, shoots my girlfriend in the face, then shoves shotgun under his chin and pulls the trigger. Murder-suicide. Life's never been the same for me since. Lots of messages, so I wanted to say this. Thank you all for the support. It was 20 years ago, and though I'll never get over it, I can live with it. It took nearly 2 years before I came to realize there was nothing I could have done to stop it. I will never forgive her family for knowing what that man was doing to her, and they did nothing about it. I'm not really good with words, but I wanted to thank everyone for the kindness and support. I live in Syria and I've been forced to leave my house due to ISIS attacks on our city. My family and I lived for 2 days under light artillery between ISIS soldiers and regime-affiliated troops that lived in the neighborhood. As I looked through the window, I saw an ISIS soldier running with a rocket launcher screaming. Then there was a hole in the building in front of him, and the 3 men inside were blown to pieces. He quickly got shot in the chest and laid on the ground, dead. Oddly enough, and lucky for me, this incident didn't make a permanent damage on my well-being. I speak of it with the family sometimes to remember how we miraculously managed to survive. When I was 6, my family went to see Sesame Street on Ice downtown. When we were leaving, a little girl my age was struck by a van and dragged across the parking lot. I remember the mother jumping on the windshield screaming at the driver while the van was still moving. My mom was a nurse and was helping until the ambulance arrived, but she was already dead. I can still remember the screams and lifeless body of that little girl. This was over 30 years ago. Was going to work one day when a van hit a cyclist. Saw the person fly through the air, looked like a mannequin. I kept talking to the body, but, with blood coming from his ears, I knew he was dead. Unfortunately, they never released the name of the victim. I would have liked to have visited the grave. Some of the other witnesses were messed up, but I was, and still am, okay with it. I read that one's hearing is the last thing to go. If I am ever in that bad situation again, I will talk more conversationally. Worked at a skating rink in the late 80s, early 90s. I was in my late teens. It was Sunday Soul Night session. Very crowded. About 600 that night. As we were trying to clear the parking lot after closing, gunfire erupted between two gangs. Everybody hit the deck while the shootout happened. A 12-year-old girl panicked while coming from inside and started running. She ran into the crossfire and took one to the head about 6 feet away from me. Killed instantly. Here is the article about the rink itself being a magnet for problems. I've seen people die in combat since, but being a little girl is what haunts me about that one. 5 years ago. There was an attempted home invasion at my house when I was 18. I was downstairs watching Top Gear when I hear somebody trying to break in the door. My father, military type, very protective, confronted the guy, and the guy turned around and shot my dad in the chest with a sawed-off shotgun. My dad was able to fire off a couple of shots afterward, killing him. But my father already was on the ground, dead. This is a very short version. First time writing this out. Still surreal to think about. Turned out the guy was a felon with 6 butcher knives down his pants. Presumably trying to find some reason to hurt someone. I consider my father a hero. Most people considered his actions stupid or irresponsible, local internet commenters, but you had to know him to understand his mentality. If you want the full detailed story and my recovery, or if you're struggling with PTSD, PM me. Edit. I was 5 feet behind my father the whole time. Will never forget holding my father in my arms, holding his gunshot wound. Thank you everyone for such kind words, really make me think. Thank you so much. I was in Terminal 2 at Barcelona Airport the morning of March 24, 2015. There were only 3 flights leaving the terminal, and we were all delayed due to fog. 150 people boarded Germanwings Flight 9525 30 minutes before we boarded our flight. Although I didn't see it happen, we were the last people to see them alive. The first officer crashed the plane into the French Alps, killing himself and murdering the other 149 people on board. It will haunt me for the rest of my life. Me and my friends were on the bus. When the door opened, a guy ran in and pulled someone off the bus by his hair. Once outside, with one smooth and clean motion, slit his neck. It seemed like a professional hit, but I don't know for sure. We rushed to help him, but he died within seconds. Another time, I was in Guatemala and there was a guy in a motorcycle in front of us. Another car pulled up next to him and ran him off the road. We saw him get launched off the road onto the rocks. My brother-in-law went to get help him. When he came back, his clothes were covered in blood and said nothing. He talked to the police and EMTs, and the rest of our car ride was silent. The final time, I was asleep. It was about 3 a.m. and I heard shouting and footsteps. I went outside to check on it. It was really loud, so my next-door neighbor also heard it. He works at the ER. When I got there, he was helping a man who had been stabbed several times around the abdomen. I called 911 and applied pressure to one of the stab wounds. When the EMTs arrived and took them away, I asked my neighbor if we saved that guy's life. He told me that nothing was for sure, but that he didn't think that guy was going to make it. I used to live in a real bad neighborhood that had a lot of drugs and gang violence. I swear that street had been shut down due to drug lab raids at least twice a year. There was a drug dealer who lived across the street and had a really nice green Dodge Charger that I loved. One night, I guess, a drug deal went wrong and I heard a lot of yelling, so I look out the window and I see the car up in flames. A few days, as I'm getting home, I see the same guy running down the street as 3 to 4 guys are chasing him with. One of the guys caught up to him and beat him to death with a baseball bat. We moved out within the year. I was standing at the crosswalk. The guy next to me started walking. It was pre-dawn, and without looking so did I. The guy behind me grabbed my collar and yanked me back to the sidewalk. I spun around pissed off. The guy in front of me got hit by a car speeding through the intersection. I freaked out and called 911, but the guy died before the ambulance got there. The guy that pulled me back was gone. White guy, sunglasses, tan coat. Guy that got hit was fit as hell, wearing a gray windbreaker. Was playing a show back in 2013 in downtown San Jose, California on a Friday night. Just finished my set and was outside smoking a cigarette with a friend. Looked down the street and saw two good-looking women with a guy standing on the corner waiting to cross the street. Some dude was jaywalking across a busy street, which caught my eye, and as he approached the guy with the two girls, he just sucker punched the guy as hard as he could, which I heard from half a block away. Dude fell back and cracked his head on the curb. The girls start screaming, and me and my buddy run over to see if we can help. Nope. This guy was convulsing and bleeding out his ears and chewing his tongue to shreds. The girls take their tops off to try to use as pillows bandages, and a few moments later, dude stopped moving. All that was left was just a river of blood leaking out of his skull and ears. Cops showed up moments later, took vitals, and 5 minutes later, the guy had a white sheet over him. Don't know if they caught the guy that hit him. I was in the military. We were at training camp and doing rappel training. We had a recruit, 18 years old, that was next in line. He kept saying stuff like, "Drill sergeant, my equipment is malfunctioning, drill sergeant." And, "Drill sergeant, I need help with my equipment, drill sergeant." Of course, the drill sergeant thought he was just being a stupid recruit. After saying a bunch of funny, hateful stuff to the kid that made everyone want to laugh, he said, "You have 3 seconds to rappel recruit." And started counting. At that point, you could see the fear in the kid's eyes, and we started to realize that he was very serious. When the drill sergeant finished counting, he put his hand on the recruit's chest, pushed him, and the kid fell 60 foot straight backwards, landing flat on his back. The sound that came out of this kid when he hit the ground, the gurgling, all of it, I'll never forget it. I was later in the first sergeant's waiting room, and our captain was in the office with him. I could overhear the phone conversation with the parents. They assured them, "We did everything we could but, insert name of recruit here, did not ensure their equipment was properly secured and suffered a malfunction due to his oversight, and that they were in the hospital in critical condition." He died before the end of the night. When I was 11, I was sitting outside of a mom and pop store that was across the street from a pretty seedy bar. There were 4 guys in front of the bar, sitting on or standing around their motorcycles. A pickup truck with 5 or 6 guys in the back came flying down the street in cloud of dust. The guys in the back of the truck all had shotguns. They were shooting before the truck came to a stop. All 4 bikers went down. The men got out of the truck and fired at least 1 kill shot into every one of them. Got back in the truck and drove off. I found out later that the bikers had raped a girl that I knew from school. I knew who killed those men. The girl's older brother was one of the men in the back of the truck. I have 5 sisters. I never said a word to anyone about it. No one was ever charged. When I was a teen, I spent a couple of summers in this monastery in France, which was a place for different people to gather, do workshops, and socialize. It was a beautiful place in the mountains, very welcoming and peaceful. The central church was carpeted and separated into small rooms for workshops in a daytime, but the inner walls would be removed for the evening mass and could accommodate few thousand people. We would mostly sing song, and the monk who started this place would say a few words. One night, while he was speaking and preparing for the songs, a woman jumped at him with a knife and started stabbing him. She got removed pretty quickly, but the monk died almost instantly due to loss of blood and the severity of his wounds. That night, the atmosphere there was nothing like I ever experienced before or after for that matter. Thousands of people were mourning, singing, and crying, gathered in the church. It was a surreal feeling. You could just feel that you can't control your empathy. Was walking down the 16th Street Mall in Denver, and I saw a homeless-looking person pushing another homeless-looking person in a wheelchair down the street. They bumped into another guy, older dude, maybe 60 or something, and he said, "Hey, watch where you're going." The guy who was pushing the wheelchair said, "You watch where you're going." Older dude said, "Fuck you." Younger dude punched him in the face. He was knocked out instantly and just fell like a tree that's been cut down by a lumberjack. His head hit the pavement before the rest of his body and just caved in. Like an overripe watermelon. Then blood spurted out of his other ear a few times, like 7 to 10 feet, and just stopped. Younger dude runs off, pushing his friend. Cop comes by a few moments later. I'm just standing there, in shock. I described the guy and pointed him in the right direction. Cop came back a few minutes later and had me ID the guy, then drives off. 10 minutes has probably passed and the dude's body is still laying there. An ambulance finally comes, loads him up, and drives off without sirens or lights. That's when I knew he was for sure dead. I went and sat on a bench, still in shock. Then, a shopkeeper comes out with a hose and just sprays the blood off the sidewalk like it's something he did every day. A few minutes later, a family just walks by on the still damp pavement, none the wiser about what had just happened. It was absolutely surreal.